Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast. Today's guest is Chris Mayne, councillor, who's been involved with the Casselholme and has recently been voted off the island at the Casselholme board. Very interesting dynamics going on there. He gives us some really great insight. Joining me as co-host is Stu Campaigne, reporter from Bay to Day. He has been covering the issues of the Casselholme refurbishment and the change in the governance of the Castle Arms that has some people a little upset, thinking that municipal representation should continue on there. And that's the big fight. Chris explains it really well. He gives us some insight about what's going on there. And I enjoyed that conversation and having Chris in the podcast studio here at the Echo Podcast Network. And before we get into that, our title sponsor today is Source for Sports, owned by Paul McLean, who's my co-host on the Sportscast. So it's really great to have them. Let's listen to our title sponsor.
Sports aren't just what we do, they're who we are. Source for Sports North Bay is your advocate, your local support system, and your biggest fan. 1321 Fisher Street has grown from a place where knowledgeable experts can help you find exactly the gear you need, to the hotbed of team uniforms, apparel and fanwear, to a community stronghold for all the things that truly matter to you and your family's sports journey. We love helping you find your first pair of skates, as much as we relish supporting local leagues, teams, and athletes. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.
Our guest today is Councillor Chris Mayne. Thank you very much for coming in.
So I talk now?
You can talk now.
Great. Pleasure to be here.
That's enough.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I was going to say, I really enjoyed the podcast. I really do. I'm pretty sure I've seen most of them.
Oh, cool.
Because a lot of the people on the podcasts are the people that are on council that I work with all the time. It's nice to hear more about their backgrounds, some of their thoughts on the different issues. And, I think you've been through most of the councillors now, and I was actually starting to feel left out. So thanks for having me here today.
Right on. And we have a good reason because you're going to tell us what happened at the Castle Arms board that you got voted off.
That's true. We'll save that one for the end. Stay tuned for details. But yeah, there's no shortage of drama in my life. That's for sure.
Right on. Well, that's a very interesting file, right? Because you were on the Casselholme board when it was going through its refurbishment dramas.
Yep.
Right? And the financing and approvals and the municipal fights. And are you still on the Casselholme board?
Yeah. So I've been on the Casselholme board about 14 years at this point. I served 8 of those years as chair.
Right.
And, subsequent to the last election, Mark is now chair and I sit as vice chair.
Oh, okay.
So Casselholme, there's no shortage of issues at Casselholme, but it's nice to see the new building coming along. We've been in 2 or 3 times now, just to monitor the progress as the floors go up, as they're drywalling now. Unfortunately, we're definitely behind schedule, probably even more than a year later than we'd hoped. Earlier this spring, we thought we'd be moving in by Thanksgiving, and now that's been pushed off until May or June, but it's a pleasure to see it coming along. It's going to be a beautiful facility, and this is only the first half, but hopefully by next, early next summer, late spring, residents will actually be moving into the new facility, for the new facility.
That's good to know. I know Stu has the next question, the money shot.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Stu,
maybe we should set the table
be
first.
gentle.
Yeah.
Be gentle.
I'll be gentle.
Okay.
Maybe we should set the table a little bit first. I think maybe a lot of our viewers and listeners maybe don't quite get the distinction between the Casselholme board and the Castle Arms. Can you give us the Coles Notes version of what you did on each one, maybe, and we can go from there.
And don't forget Castle Arms Management Services.
And that's right, like what I like to call CAMS.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
What's the difference between Casselholme and Castle Arms?
Casselholme is a long-term care facility governed by provincial legislation under the Long-Term Care Act. The only people who are admitted to Casselholme basically have cognitive or physical issues where they really can't live independently anymore. And we're seeing the severity of the admissions, which are made by the Ontario Health Team. Each year they're becoming a little bit more severe. 40 years ago, I think people saw Casselholme as a retirement home. You'd get an apartment, and if you needed some help, you'd gradually, move through the system. But these days, the people who are being admitted are having more and more complex needs every year. So really, it's one step below a hospital, but it's long-term care for people who really can't live independently anymore.
And Castle Arms?
So Castle Arms is adjacent to Casselholme. There are 4 buildings. There's even one in Mattawa. So Castle Arms really are just apartments for seniors, specifically for seniors. We don't have any young families. It's, senior accommodations. The rents are subsidized by DSAB. So they're intended to be affordable units. 240 units, almost the same number as beds as we have at Casselholme. So Castle Arms is strictly apartments. Casselholme is a medical long-term care facility. And then Castle Arms Management Services, which is even smaller, is really a small corporation we set up about 4 years ago that provides consulting services to other long-term care apartments or nursing homes. And we charge for that and make a little bit money from that. And those monies go to either Castle Arms or Casselholme, depending what projects we can find.
In the $121 million budget.
I noticed you were choking as you said that.
Yeah, that's
Dave.
a big number, right?
Yeah.
For the refurbishment project in multiple stages, and which you indicated was delayed by about a year or so.
Yeah.
How much of that budget is money that was supposed to be coming from the management services?
Oh, none. Zero.
None?
No. Mm-hmm. As a very small example, so right now, Castle Arms Management Services has offered to make a contribution towards a chariot. It's a large tricycle. People ride around the facility in it. It's about a $20,000 purchase.
Oh, okay.
That's the kind of scale that Castle Arms Management Services raises money. It's like having a small charitable foundation, but we're actually going out doing work, charging fees for services, and then anything that's considered a profit, we'll try and assign to a project at Casselholme or Castle Arms.
So I'll pick up there, Chris.
Okay.
Let you.
Sorry, my voice is going. Time for a water break, but go ahead.
No problem. I'll ask a long enough question. I think this is from my standpoint as a reporter, it's and you and I have spoken about it at various times over the years, and
should I be denying things yet, or wait a minute?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a regular function of a council member and a chair and different things, and a reporter to discuss things.
Yep.
I think it's really hard. This is a really hard, and I've said this to Dave as well over the years. It's a really hard one to explain, for lack of a better word, to the public. And I don't think there's a lack of interest. I just think there's a lack of. They don't really get it. I don't really get it sometimes. I mean, it's very confusing.
I don't get it either.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, I mean, I think in a way, there's two ways to look at it. One way is it kind of gets a pass because people just don't get it and therefore don't tune in. But there's also some people who are very invested in it, and should be, because it's an important part of our community. So there's been some battles at these boards over the years. Some have been reported in the media, some haven't. Many haven't, in fact. How did we get? So I'm going to jump ahead now. Yes. How did we get to where you've been? I don't know how have you been voted off or dismissed from the Castle Arms board?
Oh, we're going to go right there.
Yeah, we're going to go right there, and then we can work backwards. I think it's important to get that out front. So the reason you're here today, or one of the reasons, is I feel you feel like there's been an injustice. You've done a lot of work for this board, and you've been dismissed kind of without a recourse for you.
Well, I'm here today because I bumped into Dave at the camera store 2 weeks ago.
Photo Metro.
There, yes.
You got a little plug in there,
but no. So sure. So we can talk about different issues. If we're going to go to Castle Arms, like you say, I'm going to set the table. Okay, so I'm just going to provide some history so that anyone who isn't familiar with Castle Arms and what some of the issues are, I'm going to tell the whole story. So put your feet up, grab a coffee. To Ben, who's managing the studio, this is going to be about a half an hour answer. Okay? So Castle Arms, which are simply apartments for seniors that are subsidized by DSAP, so affordable senior apartments, no level of medical supervision at all. Were set up over 40 years ago. Over the years, we've gone from one building to 4 around Casselholme, the most modern building being the one on Castle Street, and we also have 14 units in Mattawa. So, built over the years, 40 years. For the longest time, Castle Arms was Sleepy Hollow. It was a well-managed apartment building, affordable rents. Everything's looked after well in terms of repairing the roof, replacing the windows when it's needed. Well-managed. And for the longest time, the Castle Arms board was a mirror of the Casselholme board. We would wind up a Casselholme board meeting, take a break for 2 minutes, reconvene, and exactly the same people came back to the table, and we were the board for Castle Arms. And which was really all municipal council members with 2 provincial appointees. That's how it ran for the longest time. About 4 years ago, during the renovations, the redevelopment for Casselholme, at the point where we came out with the pricing of the $121 million, some of the councils were very concerned with that. Some of the municipal representatives were very concerned with that. And 3 of the Casselholme board members resigned because although they'd been supportive of the redevelopment up until that point, they were concerned that they couldn't represent their municipality's concerns at the Casselholme table, which is correct. Your fiduciary duty at the Casselholme table is to represent the residents of Casselholme and what's in the best interest of Casselholme and her residents. So at the time, we lost 3 members. Because it was contentious with the municipalities, we really just couldn't go back to the municipalities and ask them to nominate 3 more. So at the board level, and at this point I think I was chair of Casselholme, maybe it's time to reconsider the composition of the Castle Arms board. So what we did, we had 3 vacancies. We replaced one with Alan McCauley, who's a long-term resident at Castle Arms. It's the first time the board ever had an actual resident of Castle Arms become a member of the board, which was great. And he was an excellent representative. He unfortunately just passed away about a month ago, but Al Marquette was a terrific board member. A second position went to really just a business person in the community. He was a vice president of a senior corporation in Ontario. He brought a really professional level of expertise to the board. Otherwise was myself, Mark King, Sherry Culling, who stayed on from the Casselholme board. We just kind of continued in place. And again, the board was, Castle Arms board was well run. So here comes the election in 2022. So some new people at the Casselholme board table, and I guess some new people at the municipalities. They started to raise concerns with the way Castle Arms had changed the board. We'd kind of become a skills-based board. Although myself and Councillor Mark King were there, we weren't there as municipal appointees. We really just were kind of carryovers on the board from the previous term. There was no mandate to have municipal councillors on the board, the same way that there is with Casselholme, where the board composition is mandated by legislation under the Long-Term Care Act. So Castle Arms had the ability to basically reset the board with a skills-based board. So that's what was done, but a number of the member municipalities at Casselholme felt they had lost control over a very important asset in the area. East Ferris, as an example, has a number of residents at Castle Arms, and they said, well, we want our representation on the board so our residents can keep in touch with us, and so those are the concerns that were brought to Castle Arms. That was about a year ago. So we started to discuss it, and one of the concerns that was raised early on, if the municipalities want control, why do they want control? Castle Arms is very fortunate that we don't make a lot of money, but there is, I'll say about $500,000 in unrestricted assets in the bank. So there's cash in the bank. Castle Arms 1 has been paid for now. The mortgages is paid off. The mortgages should be paid off on Castle Arms 2 and 3 within the next 2 years. So Castle Arms has cash in the bank. We've got cash flow that's improving as the mortgages are paid off. And obviously we've got the equity on the buildings as well. And some people have estimated the equity value of the buildings $30 million, pick a number. So if Castle Arms is financially well off, there were concerns raised that the municipalities were eyeing Castle Arms because of its assets. Maybe we can take the cash and apply it to Casselholme was one of the concerns. So that was an ongoing discussion for a number of months. We're December now, so this past June, at every board meeting, there were motions kind of back and forth asking questions. Could Castle Arms consider returning some municipal councillors to the table? Let's say, 3 out of 5. Could 3 out of 5 be elected municipal representatives? Could 4 out of 7? Could 3 out of 3? So this discussion went back and forth, and nothing was ever agreed to. So in June, it got to the point where we were starting to get the lawyers involved, and the lawyers were actually trying to find middle ground. Is there some compromise that would bring in municipal representation and keep the municipalities happy, but would still let Castle Arms have a sense of being an independent, skills-based board? And we really were having a tough time reaching consensus on that. The two boards got together really for a face-to-face and frank discussion. It took us from June until October to actually get the two boards together. And that was at the recommendation of the lawyers. Let's just get together in one room, talk it through, see if we can't find a compromise that is at least acceptable to both boards. And unfortunately, there was no agreement. So my own position is that I am open to there being municipal representation on the board. I can appreciate some of the municipalities' concerns. So that was my position. But the majority of the board took exception to that, and I was voted off the board, which I was actually voted off the board twice. Yes, not just once, but twice. There was a meeting called with the proper 2 weeks' notice, but I wasn't told until basically the day beforehand by a fellow board member that the intention of the meeting was to vote me off the board, and not just remove me as chair to a board member, but just to vote me right off the board because my views weren't compatible with the majority of the board. If I was voted off of every board that I have a difference of opinion on at some point, I can't think of any board I'd still be on in the community. So
the new chairman is Larry Fold.
So he was now. So just to rewind here. So I've only been voted off once so far. Okay, because of a difference of perspective at the board level.
And just for my own, as you're explaining it, and sorry for interrupting, when did Larry join the board?
So Larry Full joined the board, I'm going to say this summer. So he's been on 3-4 months at this point.
Okay,
Yep.
so go
And
ahead.
I'll even say Gary's a good and thoughtful addition to the board.
Larry?
Yep. So, it was actually Casselholme's lawyers who commented, that you've removed Chris as chair and from the board. You're allowed to do that, but I should have been given 2 weeks' notice and told what the meeting was about. And as it was, I was given a phone call the day before the meeting. By the way, we're going to vote you off the board tomorrow. You can either resign tonight or face a board election tomorrow. Okay, well, sign me up for the vote. I want to sit there and, talk to everybody and look them in the face. If they're going to vote me off, I understand that, but I want to know why as well. So my understanding at the end of that initial vote was because I was open to compromise and they weren't. Lawyer said shouldn't give them notice. Okay, so that first vote was rescinded, deemed not acceptable. So 2 weeks later, we had another vote. Al Marquette unfortunately passed away in the meantime, so there actually was a new board member who came in to replace Al. She's also a resident at Casselholme, and I'm sure will be a good board member. But at the next meeting, again, I was voted off. So that was it. I respected the result of the second vote, and at that point, I was no longer in the Casselholme board. I am still on the Casselholme board, because you can't vote off a municipal representative. But at the Casselholme board, they do have the ability to, basically vote off. The majority can vote off whoever they don't like for whatever reason.
Right.
Anyway.
And how do you feel about that?
That I served on the Casselholme board for, I have to think, I'm going to say 12 years, 8 of those as chair. Personally, I thought I was a resource to the board. I sit on DSAB. DSAB is a major funding of the subsidized units at Casselholme. I also chair NDHC, and I also sit on the Casselholme board. And to me, there's, as well as being on North Bay Council, to me, there's value to having people like myself at the board who can, maybe have a broader perspective of what the needs of the community are. And I think Casselholme shares that perspective, but maybe just not in the same way that I do. So, a little bit frustrating, disappointing, but at the end of the day, that was a decision of the board.
And just to fill in one little gap, and then before I think Stu has another question, when the municipalities were up in arms somewhat over the refurbishment contract, the funding, the drama that was over, the approvals and all that time, and then there was talk about if North Bay is going to have to run it alone, if the municipalities that didn't want to be involved got off. One way of balancing the balance sheet as far as having to get a large loan for the refurbishment was to have that asset on the books as Casselholme. Is that still discussed or talked about, or am I way off on that? I remember it being reported. I just don't remember.
Right. So there were a lot of people with different thoughts at the time.
Right.
But I'm going to say those discussions never made it as far as the council table.
Okay.
At one point during the redevelopment, when the price of $121 million was on the table, there was discussion about North Bay just taking it over.
Yeah.
Tell you what, the municipalities want out. We get that. Let's North Bay just take it over 100%. Okay. So North Bay's cost would have increased about 15%. North Bay still currently funds about 85% of the cost of Casselholme. To completely take it over, we would have increased the cost of the North Bay taxpayers by about 15%.
And what does that mean in money? How much a year does the city put towards Casselholme?
Right now, about $3 million per year.
So that $3 million would go up by 15%.
roughly.
Okay.
Yep. But the sense from for myself is, why would you do that? You've got people who are paying to be part of it. Understood, no one really wants to be part of it, and that includes North Bay. At one point, we looked at just setting up Castle Arms as a standalone not-for-profit. In the end, it just wasn't practical. But in Ontario, because it's a municipal responsibility to fund a portion of long-term care, all municipalities are on the hook for a portion of their budgets on a per capita basis towards long-term care. Now, so, Mattawa, in the day, there were jobs, positions, beds at risk in Mattawa where their long-term home was considering selling their beds, and they didn't want to lose the beds or the jobs in the community. Makes perfect sense. So they moved forward. They bought the local nursing home, attached it to the hospital. So now they've actually got two commitments. But that was a commitment they made. Anyway, so
Before we continue on this great conversation we're having with Councillor Chris Mayne about Casselholme and Castle Arms governance, I'm going to take a little break and talk about one of our sponsors for these podcasts, Twigg's Coffee Roasters. I could really use a coffee right now, actually. It's I know theirs is they're a good wake me up for me. I liked a 2 milk and a raw sugar in mine. If anybody's ever considering to get me one, appreciate that. I know I still owe Scott a scone or a scone. How do you pronounce that, Ben? Scone, right? Still owe him a scone. I'm going to probably get him a raisin one, just because they got some great bakery stuff there, and it's a good spot to catch up on all the gossip that's going on in North Bay. I know when I worked at the Nugget, I used to go there a lot more often than I used to. But whenever I go there, I recognize people I have seen. I get to chat with them. I get to pick up on a little bit of the latest gossip, and it works for me. So you might want to try it out. Find your favorite specialty drinks at our espresso bar, rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice, or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. Twiggs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. So check them out. One of our great supportive sponsors, Twiggs Coffee Roasters.
It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers. Have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cap SR 4-wheel drive and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at northbaytoyota.com for details.
Chris, it wasn't quite half an hour, but it was close. No.
Okay, yeah.
No, it was good though. I mean,
But it's a fulsome description of it from your perspective, and that's very valuable.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
like you've told this part of the story a few times.
I just lie in bed at night and this movie replays in my head every night.
So what I wonder, and I think a lot of people wonder, is okay. I have a couple of things. First of all, the assets you can't borrow against Casselholme. Am I correct in saying that? Like the city of North Bay can't take out a loan with Casselholme as an asset the way it stands now.
No, because Casselholme is a standalone corporation.
If the municipalities controlled Castle Arms, could they borrow against those assets?
I would say no. Now, I'm sure there are scenarios where anything is possible. But one commitment that was made at the October meeting was that unequivocally there's no interest from the municipalities to the financial assets of Casselholme. And they're prepared to sign a covenant to that effect, that if there was municipal representation on the board, we're here because we want to be involved in the management, the future direction of Castle Arms. We're not here to redirect the assets, cash flow equity of Castle Arms towards other municipal projects. And you can't do that, I don't think, anyway, because you're going into a completely different standalone corporation. You can't take money from, I can't think of another example, but you couldn't go into Ontario Northland and take money from their operations and put it towards the city of North Bay. That may not be a great example, but no, bottom line, no, you can't do that.
Okay. So this is kind of where it gets confusing to me. And again, like if you think for other people is, if you could explain kind of the two sides of this and then maybe explain what side you prefer, I think that would be really helpful to people to understand what the kind of the battle has been about. Is that something?
I'll say the discussion has been around the composition of the board, and really who controls the board. So my own position is that I was open to compromise on the board. That if the municipalities want to have a majority of persons on the board, I'm amenable to that. And I know there's at least one other person on the board with the same position.
Is that Councillor Mark King?
I'll let other people confirm that.
That's fine.
But I suspect Mark would confirm that.
But this is, and sorry to be clear, this is a board of 5?
So Castle Arms is a board of 5.
With the woman who's just joined, it's 5.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'm interested to see who replaces me.
Yeah, I guess that's a consideration. Can you apply for your old position?
That would be an interesting application, yes.
Is there a notice out there for anybody to be involved?
So that I'm not on the board, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, you could, potentially outside of another, another board member or the chair. And I believe Larry Fold is the chair now, or Jamie Lowery is the CEO. You're right, you could ask them, will there be something advertised locally looking for a new board member who could bring specific skills, around long-term and senior accommodations to the mix? That could
Imagine this board doesn't have public meetings because it's not a public entity.
Castle Arms should have public meetings. And actually, whenever the discussions around the board composition have taken place, those discussions have always taken in an open public meeting.
Are they recorded anywhere, or a video? And
I want to say yes, at least some of them. You'd have to check with Castle Arms on that for copies of the minutes. I believe former North Bay Councilor Joanne Brosseau, I know she's attended some of the meetings.
Okay, I know she's been trying to keep an eye on the Casselholme.
Right, she's Joanne probably has better attendance at Casselholme than I do, but she's been great for trying to keep engaged and interested in a lot of the local boards and issues.
Is one of the North Bay City elected officials on the Casselholme board that's pushing for municipal representation on Casselholme's Mayor Peter Chirko?
So I'll let someone else confirm that.
I had heard that he was.
Yeah.
He was trying to rectify the situation, was one of his priorities.
Yeah. So on the Casselholme side, all the discussions around board composition have taken place in camera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, Castle Arms, open discussion, Casselholme in camera. So at Casselholme, although I'm vice chair, when the discussion comes up to Castle Arms, I have to excuse myself from the room and declare a conflict.
Interesting.
Yep.
Not anymore, though.
No, I said at the last meeting, hey guys, guess what? I don't have to declare a conflict anymore.
Chris, in this, sorry, Dave.
Oh, go ahead.
Chris, in this situation,
Yes.
would you say is it really about the things it should be about, or is it more just a power struggle to see who comes out on top?
Boy, okay. And what we haven't discussed so far is really what is this all about? So again, going back to the phase where the redevelopment was being brought forward, and the $121 million price tag was on the table, one of the issues, discussions was the north wing. So this is one of the newest parts of Casselholme. It's adjacent to Highway 11. It's a newer building. It's physically in good structural condition. So the suggestion to Casselholme was, we should run this as apartments and maybe put some commercial space on the ground floor. And, we see potential to actually make money, that this could be a viable operation. So that was the discussion. But a couple of things came up. I guess number one, Casselholme, under the directives of the Long-Term Care Act, can't get involved in any business other than the operations around long-term care specifically. Number two, the cost to renovate, put in an elevator, close off the walls are about $1 million for the North Wing redevelopment by itself. So it was first proposed that Casselholme take it over and somehow make some money from it and use it to offset their costs. But the recommendation came back that, we'll tell you what, how about keep the $1 million additional costs off of the current $121 million project, would have gone to 122 if the North Wing had stayed on. And how about Castle Arms takes over the redevelopment of the North Wing? So there were motions passed at both Castle Arms and Casselholme to do that. Casselholme would lease or sell the North Wing to Castle Arms. Castle Arms would take over the costs, pay that $1 million, and then work out the business case and kind of move forward with redeveloping the North Wing. So architects about 2 years ago gave us some initial drawings, and the proposal was, and I would say still is, to turn the North Wing, the second and third floor, into 34 assisted living beds. So if you picture Barclay House or Empire Living or Marina Point, these are accommodations where the definition of being able to be a resident there is that you can at least make it to the dining room. Okay, you're not incapacitated, you're not bedridden. You can at least make it to the dining room. So 34 units, that's a significant addition to assisted living beds in the community. The dining rooms at the end of each floor would be maintained. Casselholme would cater the meals, and that would actually be revenue for Casselholme. And the ground floor would be commercial space, could be a pharmacy, could be doctor's offices, could be anything that kind of ties into long-term care. And perfect. You're surrounded by not only Casselholme, but also Mackay Homes and other senior apartments in the area. So, no question, it's a good proposal. And because we're renovating an existing building, price-wise, and I'm afraid I'm going to make up numbers now, but the units could be less than $200,000 each, whereas new units in the community, NDHC or DSAB, we use a figure of about $350,000 to $400,000 to create new units in the community. So, the redevelopment of the North Wing is a very good proposal. What's frustrating, I guess, is that it's all kind of getting caught up in this. There's still lots of time. No one's going to be moving out of, or the final move out from Casselholme is still 4 years away. So, there's lots of time to address this, but it needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, it's kind of getting caught up in the discussions around the board composition that I think everyone has the long-term best interests of seniors and community in mind, but there are different perspectives being brought to the table, and the challenge is, getting those perspectives to come together. So my own position was, let's find a compromise and move this forward, but so far that has not happened.
The delays in the refurbishment itself, about a year now, past what was expected. Does that come with associated rising costs above the $121 million? Or is that really a firm contract that...
Yeah, so Casselholme was not a time and money contract. It was a stipulated amount. So far, no, we're not over budget. Now, I'm trying to think. I know there have been some issues that were, beyond Casselholme's control, beyond the general contractor's control. But the contingency was about $5 million. Roughly, I'll say we're about halfway through the contingency. We haven't, so we're not over budget at this point. Now, where the costs, where some costs do accrue, we're starting to borrow money already. So, here's another year where you're paying interest and you're not ready to move in yet and get the money from the ministry. But, right now I would say we're still on budget with the $121 million.
Now, interest rate is a nice segue into a very sort of tough situation as far as Casselholme goes, right? Interest rates went up extremely higher than they were when you were actually making the plan.
Agreed. Yeah. So 3 years ago, when the price tag came on the table, interest rates were below 3%, and now they're between 5 and 6. There's a little bit of fluctuation. We're hoping there might be a little bit of a decrease, but those interest rates are probably adding in excess of $1 million a year to the carrying costs for Casselholme. So it's significant. For the municipalities that were concerned with, how would they afford it initially, those costs with rising interest rates have only gone up.
There was also, Chris, a resolution at a time, and it got support from various partners, and I know North Bay, but it was kind of a fund that Casselholme missed out on because of the date. It was just past the date. There was about $30 million, I want to say, or something like that. Or did that ever? I guess what I'm asking is, did that ever come through?
Right. So to set the table, that's your term. That's your term.
Like
so to set the table. So the $121 million price tag was on the table. We were moving forward. I think some level of construction might even have started. There was Rod Phillips was up at one point in September, and can't remember if that was 2020, 2021, but he was up to make an announcement specifically on the Sienna Living property that's coming along, and coming along very well.
And Phillips is a minister, or
was a minister of long-term care at the time. Yeah. So big announcement, and I think at that point, the expected price at Sienna Living, the publicly announced price, was in the range of about $50 million for 80 beds, I believe. Yep. And so at Casselholme, we saw the numbers they were announcing, and we could not figure out how they were getting to that price given construction rates in the community. And, everyone was pointing to this as this is the way to do it. They're doing such a great job, and they're getting this many beds for this much money. Why can't Casselholme do that? And we looked at it with the architects and the engineers, and we couldn't get to that same price. So the announcement was made about 2.5-3 months later. No one really noticed, but all the contractors left the site. So what had happened was they'd announced a price, but when they actually started to go and try and finalize those prices, they realized, gee, we can't do it for this amount of money. And everything sat still until the election the next spring. And what came forward, I think this is subsequent to COVID, that construction prices were increasing dramatically and everyone's facing challenges. So the discussion with the province in Casselholme was actually part of those discussions. The Ministry of Long-Term Care, they were trying to bring forward, I believe it was 5,000 beds province-wide. Everyone's facing construction pressures. what can we do to keep moving on these long-term care beds that are needed in the province, no question. And the result was the construction fee subsidy of $35 per bed per day. So that's what was recommended moving forward, and that's what anyone who hadn't started construction by April the 1st, and I've forgotten the date, applied for and received. Even though Casselholme was part of the discussions, and I was looking for, I remember the announcement on an October afternoon, looking forward to hear that Casselholme would be getting this, because it represents almost $3 million a year in subsidy to Casselholme. It takes the concerns of the municipalities right off the table. Lo and behold, no money for Casselholme. So that's been frustrating. And, everyone's trying to address it. We're trying to lobby for reconsideration or new programs. But that's what happened. There was this $35 per bed per day subsidy that the province came out with. Because Casselholme had started our shovels in the ground, we were deemed not to be eligible for it. But it was frustrating.
Stu, we're going to be wrapping it up in a little bit, but you have another question. And Chris, then think about the last thing that we can fit in at the end that's important for people to understand.
But not a canoeing story, right?
Not today.
Not today. Okay. That's the podcast I really want to do. But anyway.
Well, we'll get you back in
one
there
day,
for that
okay,
one.
one day.
Yeah, Ben's our canoe expert. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
We can
Okay.
get Bill Steer in here too if you need.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Just to spice things up a little bit, Chris.
They haven't been spicy enough already?
Well, you've been good. You've been
Okay.
You tell the tale. That's for sure.
Okay.
Conspicuously absent in this whole discussion, for the most part, is Jamie Lowery. So he's kind of become, I think, to some people, he's a well-known part of this kind of saga, I'm going to call it. But what are your feelings on? Is he? I think some people are split on Jamie and don't quite understand his role in all this.
No, you're right. So Jamie was the CEO at Casselholme for 8 years, and CEO at Casselholme as well, because originally it was a joint position. But when Jamie left Casselholme, he just kept. Well, he was granted. We gave him permission just to sign a contract and just manage Casselholme. So Jamie was on the podcast earlier this summer, and I was surprised he didn't talk about Casselholme and all that stuff. Because that would have been a great opportunity to get his perspective on it. So to me, Jamie's been fairly quiet on the discussion. The board members and, the new chair, I would say, have been more outspoken. Maybe that's another person to get on the show at some point.
Well, he's on my list for a repeat performance for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. So, I enjoyed working with Jamie at Casselholme. My gosh, the Casselholme redevelopment had already been ongoing for 4 years when Jamie came to North Bay. We spent 2 years considering going to a standalone, not-for-profit institution, and after 2 years, the consultants finally said, no, it's just not. It's not feasible, not practical. You really need to just focus on redeveloping what you have. So I spent the next 6 years working through various iterations of getting out to tender, getting through COVID, finally getting the tender price, and some fairly strong discussions with the municipalities, moving it forward, and but in the end, the redevelopment is moving forward. So, no, I've enjoyed working with Jamie. He's very, he's a mover and a shaker. But if you push him, he's quite happy to push back.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I did notice you guys don't vote in parallel very much on council.
No, I actually gave Jamie a high five. We did vote on this on one. It was a motion he proposed. I'm afraid I've forgotten it already. But you're right. Often I think sometimes he just likes to be against. Like as an example, he voted against the Michelle Arena. And to me, that was such a relief to support it and that it's moving forward. But Jamie voted against it, You're right. So you're right. He just sometimes seems to like to take that contrarian position. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's where the discussion comes from. George Maroussas used to do that all the time. He might even agree with you, but he'd vote against it anyway, just to have the discussion, rather than everybody just putting up their hands and saying, yeah, sure, why not?
I think the Lowery vote in Simpatico was the reopening the bylaws to. It was about the
Town hall.
The town hall stuff. Yeah, the procedural bylaw.
Okay.
I think that's the one you're talking about.
And everybody supported it.
Everyone did.
There
So
we
yeah,
go.
you had no choice.
But I remember
to-
giving him a high five because he's got a T-shirt 9-2 because
Yes.
often that's where he ends up on the votes.
And it was
think
10-1, I think.
Yeah,
on
that's
the,
right, yeah.
the arena
10-1,
vote.
okay.
I like to take credit for the 9-2, by the way. But
Okay, there you go.
Last question, Chris. You've been a long-time community volunteer, supporter, counselor, representative on Casselholme. You're at midterm here. Are you considering running again?
Who knows? One day at a time, right? In the last election, I really had to think hard about running again. And, for what it's worth, I had some health issues on top of that. But I just couldn't see myself not running, and I enjoy being involved in the issues. I think you don't always have as much impact or see things go in the direction you'd like, and I think Castle Arms is a good example of that. But, Casselholme, I think, is doing very well. Michelle Field, I've been involved with that since we went back and forth on the locations. Glad to see that one moving forward. The work in the downtown area, overall the city, the infrastructure that we're replacing roads and sewer and services. I enjoy being involved with those decisions. It's fun to be part of moving the city forward. So, I'm sure there'll be some new things to consider 2 years down the road. Who knows? But, it's 1 month at a time, I guess.
And I just wanted to ask if your health issues are under control, or should we be planting flowers, or what's going on?
Oh, send flowers. I love flowers, but I think everyone. It's so I've got this dry, raspy throat thing, and if you ever pay attention to a council meeting, I'm hacking and coughing all the way through it.
Yeah, you described it as perpetual cold.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so it's just a symptom that I have from the treatment I went through. I've got a very dry throat. I cough a lot. And I tell the girls in the office, this is my new sexy voice, this dry, raspy voice.
There you go.
So, hoping one day it may improve, but I've had it for almost 1.5 years now. I just get.
So it's a symptom of the cure.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that, you got a good radio voice now. Ben needs more people in the room.
There we go.
Sexy voice.
And call me for that canoe podcast. Okay.
Yeah. You have such excellent photos of your adventures.
Well, that's what I love. That's my thing. That's what I love to do. And I remember once on a canoe trip in Algonquin Park, I ran out of batteries. I reached into the bag, dead battery, another battery, dead battery. Went through 4 batteries, they're all dead. If I can't take pictures up here, I just packed up and went home. Oh. That's what I like to do.
That's cool. I'm a photographer, so I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. We covered a lot of ground. It was nice to hear a inside perspective of what's going on there. I know others sometimes have questions, and there's people that are still questioning how the board changed and why and the timing. But I really do appreciate your perspective on it because you were there.
Yeah, no, and I think it's an important issue. And like you say, not people really know what's going on. But, here's the chance to get, both sides of it, hopefully. And there you go. So Jamie has the 10-1 or 12-1, 11-1 T-shirt. Maybe I'll get voted off the board twice as my T-shirt. But anyway.
Thank you, Chris, for coming in. It's you've always been fair. You're always balanced. And I think you do see both sides of the issues. And I think that's a big help to what we're doing here. So
no, thanks, Stu. And handsome and articulate as well, right?
Yeah, well, I told you that before the show. We don't have to...
But pleasure to see you both here. And, Stu especially is, covers council in a lot of detail, which is terrific.
He does a good job.
And he's a great voice in the community. So, fun to see you here, Stu, because I know you've been following this issue as well.
It has. It's been like I said, it's confusing to me as many, and it's just even.
And you were looking forward to the opportunity to grill me.
Well, it's never been about that. I really just want to get the right information out, and that's kind of what I follow in my career in anything I write about. But this one I just found so difficult to kind of explain to people.
A lot of moving parts.
But it's much more clear to me today thanks to this.
There you go. And Dave, thank you. I love your podcasts, and I love the podcast. Great to be on one.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, that's another Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Stu Campaigne.
And I'm Dave Dale.
I'm still Chris Mayne.
Yeah, there you go. Sneak in there. Please like, comment, and share. That's what we need. And hey, stop in our advertisers. We appreciate that. Have a good day.